In this video, we're going to be breaking down the American Bully coat colors and patterns, the different variables that will actually change dogs, say from black to blue, from brown to fawn, and everything else in between. By the time we're done, you're either going to be an expert in knowing American Bully coat colors, or you're going to bookmark this video as your reference video to figure that out. Without further ado, let's jump in. First things first, when it comes to genetics, there are dominant genes and there are recessive genes. If you notice, dominant genes are capitalized, lowercase is for recessive. But it doesn't stop there. There's a reason why genes are expressed in pairs. And that's because you get one gene from mom and the other one from dad. It doesn't matter which one of the two gives a dominant or a recessive gene. You always express it from dominant to recessive. So capital to lowercase. If they both happen to have capital letters or dominant genes, then you just simply express it as both having capital letters. If they both have lowercase letters as recessive genes, then you express it as two lowercase letters. If there's a combination of dominant and recessive, you express it as dominant first and then recessive. All right, that pretty much wraps up the first segment of this video. I want you to hear the question I'm going to ask you. Pause the video, go down and comment, and then just come back here and hit play so you can get the answer. So here's the question. If mom has a recessive B and dad has a dominant B, how do you express it? If you answered capital B next to a lowercase b, that's correct. Now, let's dive into the colors. What you're seeing here is nothing more than the QBN Kennel color chart. If you download QBN app, whether in the App Store or the Google Play Store, scroll all the way down to where it says Store and go ahead and click on that. Click where it says Color Chart / Assessment Tool. Then click for the Assessment Tool, and then you're going to see this right here. Go ahead and click on the color chart. Color chart's not free, it's $9.99, but trust me, it's the fastest way for you to be able to get this chart into your phone and have this memorized. This chart has been set up from the most dominant genes down to genes that are dependent on what if or therefore or but scenario. To start out, we're going to be focusing on the E gene. If you notice over here, it says Eumelanin, and it's referring to black and brown pigments or the darker pigments. But right underneath it, you're seeing pheomelanin, and that's referring to the reddish or yellowish colors that are actually more bright. The one that's going to determine whether it's going to allow the darker colors in eumelanin or lighter colors in pheomelanin is going to be your E gene. So to make it nice and easy, as it's illustrated here, two lowercase e's are going to allow pheomelanin, that reddish, yellowish, maybe even cream color, to be able to come through. If you have two double E's, the rule is set that dark color hair will not be able to appear in your dog, making the double recessive, right? Because they're both lowercase, making the double recessive E gene the strongest in the color chart for American Bullies. We all know that black is a dominant color amongst animals, but this double E up here is even stronger than that because it says I'm only going to allow pheomelanin to come through, which is that reddish or yellowish color, and therefore eumelanin, which is that darker black or brown color, cannot exist. It's only going to allow one or the other. The way you allow this one is with that lowercase double E's. In other words, double recessive. For those of you that love the champagne color, what's going to happen is you're going to have the double E, which we already spoke on. You're either going to get that reddish color, brighter reddish color, brighter reddish with some yellowish in there. But to get that champagne color, you're going to need the two lowercase d's, which is going to give you dilution. We're going to get that further along, but I just want to throw that there for now. So let me just resume real quick. Double E's means that only pheomelanin is going to be allowed, and therefore these are the only colors that are going to be allowed there, right? The only other modifier is going to be dilution, which will lead the color to a champagne color. That's it. There's no more options than that. And this includes, you can't have tricoloration with this. right? So that's why there's no such thing as a champagne try. There's no such thing as a champagne try. If somebody out here is marketing that, they either don't know what they're talking about or they're pretty much making it up. So that's the second segment that I wanted you guys to learn so far. So here comes the question for this segment. Remember, after I ask the question, hit pause, go down to comments and comment, then come back here for the answer. Here's the question. 2 lowercase e's or double recessive e's allow eumelanin to express itself. True or false? If you answered false, you're absolutely right. And that's because the 2 lowercase e's or the double recessive actually allow pheomelanin to be the one to express itself and not eumelanin, which is the darker colors like black and brown. Now that we've covered this section, I want to show you the other side of the coin that actually allows eumelanin and not pheomelanin to be the one that's expressed. All right, let me move over this way. So now I want you to take a look at right here. You notice there's 2 uppercase E's, meaning dominant E, or an uppercase E and a lowercase e, which means dominant E with a recessive carrier. Either way, as long as you have a dominant E, what's going to happen is eumelanin is going to be allowed, the darker black and brown colors. I don't want you to worry with all these combinations here, whether you get a melanistic mask or if you don't. I don't want you to get into all that. I just want you to take a look at right here if you have a capital letter E. If you do, it opens up a different set of rules. And these different set of rules, we have to go to the K locus and find out if it's going to be KY, which as you can see is recessive, or a combination of KB, or KB, So what does this mean over here in the K locus? For all intents and purposes, I always look at the K locus as the last coat of paint that's going to go on the hair follicle itself. If you have any combination with KB, there's going to be a last coat of paint that's going to be dark on the hair. If you have KY on the other hand, the last coat of paint is going to be transparent. In other words, it's going to allow whatever pattern underneath that's there, in particular 10 points, to be able to show. So for right now, these combinations of KB, as you can see, are giving you a host of colors that are pretty much solid all the way through. Almost, and we'll get to that a little bit later. What's happening over here is dependent on what this says. And this is dependent on what's up here. So this says, okay, I'm gonna allow K to make a determination. K will either give you dark coat colors as the last coat of paint, or it's going to go ahead and give you a transparent coat of paint. And now we have that information. Now we need to find out which of the 2 base colors is the dog going to be. Is it going to be black or is it going to be brown? The way we're going to find that out is by going over to the B locus. B locus is going to tell us if the dog is going to be black or brown. If you notice here, you got 2 uppercase B's. You also have an uppercase B and lowercase b, and that creates black. If you have a capital letter B, that means B dominant, which equals black. If you have 2 lowercase b's, that means B recessive, which equals brown, okay? So I just want you to focus on that right now. If we have uppercase B, no matter what the combination is, you're gonna have a black dog. The only way you're going to have a brown dog is if you have 2 lowercase b's, right? That's how you're going to have a brown dog. But there's another modifier. Just like uppercase letter E combination is a modifier allowing eumelanin or the darker black and brown to come in. That had a following modifier in the K locus, which either is going to paint the last coat of paint dark or black or transparent. We then determine the dog's coat color, by going all the way to the B locus. We know now if you have a capital letter B, that's going to be black. And if you have a lowercase letter b, that's going to be brown. The next modifier is going to be the D locus. Now the D locus, D stands for dilution. Whether you want to think of it as adding white or adding transparency, it doesn't matter. It dilutes the main color. We know that main colors are either black or brown. These are the two main colors that dogs come in. Everything else is modified from there. And thus, D, in order to modify, it is a double recessive, meaning you have to have two lowercase letter d, and that brown, this brown right here, becomes fawn. This black right here becomes lighter gray, or as we refer to as blue. But that only happens when you have lowercase d's. If you have uppercase D or a combination of an uppercase D, you have no dilution and you're either stuck with an all black dog or an all brown dog. I know what you're already asking. What happens with the KY? We're gonna get there. Before we do, this is the third segment. So again, I'm gonna ask you a question, make sure to pause, go down in comments and answer, and then come back here for the answer. So here's the exercise. I want you to write up an all black dog with two capital B's and write non-dilution with a recessive carrier. So I want you to take a look at this fawn dog right here, which was a brown with dilution. Look how it's written. I want you to write that expression with a black dog with two capital B's, non-dilution, with a recessive carrier. If you wrote capital B with capital B, capital D with lowercase d, that is correct. Now, let's go ahead and jump in to KY. So when we get to KY, we now go to another set of variables, another set of rules. KY unlocks the A locus. For those of you that like tricolored American bullies, pay attention. So in order to unlock tricolors, you need the combinations of AT or ATA. And A pretty much works like a joker card in poker. It allows itself to be used with anything. We'll get into tries here in a second, but if you don't have AT and you have any other combination, that's going to lead you down this way right here. And this right here is what we refer to as sable. Now there's a variety of different sables here. And literally, if you look at the combinations that we're talking about here, they're the same combinations we were talking about up there. KY has allowed the combinations of A's to exist, and they're not AT. We're now going to have different sorts of sables, from a variety of tip sables to dilute tip sable to clear sable and dilute clear sable, all the way down to shaded sable and dilute sable. Tricoloring, again, it's the same combinations that we actually have had up here and down here. You're getting the same thing here. Only difference is you also get white markings on the chest. So if you have, say, capital B, that's going to lead you to have a black tri. Again, with brown, lowercase b, you're going to have a brown or chocolate tri. Now, if we enter the dilution, it starts changing everything. You have lowercase b with lowercase d. You now have what we call in the American Bully a lilac tri. I'm well aware that other breeds like the Frenchies, you got to have cocoa in order for it to be considered lilac. But in the American Bully, lilac or Isabella are pretty much the same. The only difference between one and the other is if you have a shade of gray or you have a shade of brown on the dog. If this is diluted enough where you have a shade of gray, that would be considered lilac. If it's got a shade of brown, that would be considered Isabella. Now, if you got this same black dog, yet we added dilution, it will then have a different shade of gray. We call that blue, and this will be a blue tri. If you have no dilution for this dog, then obviously you're gonna have a black tri. One other thing, you may have a tri dog that has actually AT-AT. However, rather than it having a last coat of paint that's transparent, you may have a dark coat of paint, and thus the tri-coloring is also going to have a hard time coming through, and that too is referred to as a ghost tri. So this ends the fourth segment I wanted to cover with you. This time I'm going to ask you two questions. Remember, once I ask you the question, make sure to pause the video, go down and comment, come back and hit play. First question I'm going to ask you is, what is referred to as any dog that has any one of these combinations of A that do not include AT-AT? What are they referred to as in general? Second part of the question is, if you have a dog that has KY, also has AT-AT, and has any one of these two combinations right here, is that referred to as a ghost tri or a full tri? If your answer below to these groups right here as either tri-carrier or sable, that is correct. If you answered either one of these two dogs as being full tri, that is correct. If you answered ghost tri, that is wrong. Because in order for you to have ghost tri, it cannot be KY. There has to be a combination of KB. Now, I would love to say we're done, but there's actually more to this. There's actually a pattern or patterns that can actually also affect this. Now, the first pattern that can affect everything is going to be Brindle. Now, I know I explained you could either have KY or combination of KB or KBKY. I purposefully did not want to add the KBR option because I didn't want to confuse you. Now that you're well aware of this, there is a possibility of having KBR in the K locus. However, Embark no longer shows the KBR gene in the K locus. So you may be seeing a Brindle dog in front of you, and when you go to the K locus and you open it up in Embark, it is showing you KB or KBKY. A couple of years back, they would actually show KBR and KY or KBR and KB. Now, here's the curveball. KBR or Brindle will actually allow tri-coloring, or that AT-AT we spoke about, to come through. However, because it's a pattern, nobody knows where the tri-coloring is going to appear. If it's going to be in one cheek or not the other, if it's going to be on one side of the shoulder or chest, or if it's going to be on one limb and not the other. It's completely up to this pattern to determine where it's going to allow the tri-coloring to come through, which now covers segment number 5. And so I'm going to ask you, do you know what a tri-brindle is called? Go ahead, pause the video and comment, and come back here for the answer. If you answered Trindle for a Brindle that also has tri-coloring, that is absolutely correct. And that completely covers the K locus completely. But there's another pattern or patterns we need to talk about. And that's none other than both Piebald, which you're going to find in the S locus, and merle. We're going to get into that here in a second. For Piebald, you're going to need the SP gene to appear. In the S locus, if you have two dominant S's or a combination of a dominant S with a recessive S, you're actually going to be getting a solid color. If you have an SI, you're going to have what they call either Irish spots, which is white little spots dispersed around the body, or you're going to have what they call the Irish collar, which is a white band that goes behind the neck down the chest. Now for Piebald, you need to have the capital S and P. And the best way I could explain Piebald is going to be a sea of white with islands of color. Now keep in mind, Piebald, because it's got seas of white, it displaces melanin, and melanin is what creates color. There are 4 main places that melanin is needed, and that's in the eyes, in the ears, in the heart, and in the liver. Where those islands of colors are going to appear, that's going to be anybody's guess. So if you have melanin displacement in the area of the eyes, the ears, the heart, and or the liver, you could be seeing a dog that has either eyesight issues, hearing issues, heart issues, or liver issues. And I'll talk a little bit more on that. Let me just jump on the M locus here real quick, which is where the merles are. And merle is a dominant gene. So if you notice, we got a capital M from either mom or dad, and we got a lowercase m from the other parent. So remember, for dominant genes, both genes don't have to be the same to express. That's a recessive gene. So in this case, a dominant gene, such as this uppercase letter M, doesn't care if there's a lowercase letter m and it doesn't match. It's still gonna show. And merle also displaces color, as you can see here. And the patterns that you're gonna be getting have to do with a whole different scale that we're not gonna get into in this particular video. But just know that it displaces melanin. And if it displaces melanin in, say, the areas of the eyes, ears, heart, or liver, it too can cause the dog to have either eyesight issues, hearing issues, heart issues, or liver issues, which is the main reason why we always say never breed two merles together. This is what's called a double merle. And if you notice in the picture below, the displacement of melanin or color is a lot more profound than it is when you just have one merle gene expressed and not the other. Also, for those of you that have dogs that have harlequin, like Great Danes, for example, it works the same way as merle, except you may have a capital letter H and a lowercase letter h. Again, you do not want to breed a piebald dog to another piebald dog, because it's going to make these islands a lot smaller and it's going to make the white sea a lot bigger. And the same could be said with merle. You don't want to breed two merle dogs because you're going to disperse color a lot more and you're going to make more white. And the same could be said with harlequin. You don't want to hit harlequin twice with two capital H's. You're going to exaggerate the displacement of color. And when that happens, you run a greater risk of having dogs that are either blind or have eyesight impairment, deaf or hearing impairment, dogs with either heart murmurs or heart issues, or dogs with enzyme deficiencies in the liver or having some sort of liver issue. So essentially, here you have it, guys. This is the QBN color chart. Like I said earlier, you can find it in our QBN app, and you can download that both in the App Store or Google Play Store. Also, guys, I want to invite you into our live stream. We go live every Monday or Friday at 8 p.m. CST. This upcoming Friday, we're going to be talking color chart. And anything here that I didn't answer or anything you weren't clear on, you can actually come on, become a member, ask questions. We're going to answer them for you using the chart. Now, this makes things a lot easier, but it doesn't explain combinations. Like, what would happen if you bred a blue dog to a brown dog? What would you get? Well, that's what we're going to be making our next video on. So make sure to click there. Been Raul from the Q. Be catching you right here.